Oh, I never saw it coming. One move, and boom, the entire board turned silent. Pawns frozen, kings trembling. Even the grandmasters. They stood up, took off their medals, and walked away in shame. Why? Because you didn't play the game. You rewrote the rules. Asterisk, damn. They called it a simple game of chess. Logic, patience, control. But you sat down at the board like a storm in disguise. You didn't wait to respond. You dictated the rhythm. Every piece you touched didn't move. It danced to your will. Ouch. The grandmasters whispered, watching their 15-year strategies fall apart in 15 seconds. They prepared for brilliance, but they weren't ready for chaos dressed as genius. You didn't just think ahead, you thought differently. You didn't sacrifice your queen, you weaponized her. And that one insane move, it wasn't luck. It was surgical destruction executed with a grin. Because the world praises safe players. But you're not safe. You're the reason they're scared to sit across the board again. Chess is a game of kings, they said. But today, the king bowed to a ghost. No claps, no celebrations, just silence. And the quiet sound of legends quitting the game. Asterisk, you didn't study every move. You studied them, their habits, their fears, their ego, and that's where they slipped. See, most players try to win, but you made them lose their minds. One by one, their confidence cracked. That rook they loved so much, gone. The bishop they built their strategy around, cornered like a rat dot. And that final move, damn it, wasn't even flashy. It was quiet, calculated, cruel. You placed that piece down like a whisper, and the entire board screamed in defeat. Boo, they tried to smile, tried to pretend they weren't destroyed. But behind that poker face was panic, because they saw something they couldn't explain. You weren't playing chess, you were sending a message to every system, every blueprint, every hierarchy. You don't fit inside the box, because you build the box and then break it. And what happened next? The judges didn't clap. They stared, speechless. The old champions, they slid their chairs back slowly and stood up, not in respect, but in fear. The headlines didn't say checkmate. They said, a monster just sat at the board and turned legends into learners. Asterisk, and here's the twist they never expected. You're not even done. That match, it was just practice. The real game is life. And guess what? In life, you're playing 5 boards at once, in the dark, with broken rules, and you're still winning. So let them retire. Let them walk away, because deep down they know this wasn't a win. It was a warning. A warning that a new mind has entered the battlefield. And it doesn't play games, it ends them. Asterisk, because let's be real, this wasn't just chess, this was a mirror. And when they looked into it, they didn't see you. They saw the reflection of their own limits. Ew, and it burned, they thought. They were built for war, until they faced someone who'd already survived it. Someone who didn't just learn the rules, you learned how to break them, without getting caught. You moved like a phantom, unpredictable, unshakable, and in that final moment, when the clock ticked, and their pieces were frozen in fear, you leaned back, smiled, and whispered, you were never playing against me, you were playing against time, and you just ran out. DAMN. That wasn't checkmate, that was soulmate level destruction. They'll remember that game every night before they sleep. And every morning they wake up knowing they'll never be that brilliant. Asterisk and you're already on the next level. Because real masterminds don't celebrate victory. They vanish before the smoke clears. While they argue about how you did it, you're rewriting your next opening. In silence, in shadows, with a smirk. Let the world keep playing safe. Let the experts build strategies. Let the prodigies memorize patterns. You were built for disruption. You were born for domination. You don't play the game, you leave it in ruins. Asterisk, so next time someone calls it just a board game, remind them your checkmate doesn't end the game, it starts a new one. One where they're no longer invited. Oh, and that, my friend, wasn't just a move, it was a message. Legends don't play by the rules. They become the reason the rules change. Asterisk, you placed that piece down like a whisper, and the board, it shattered like glass. It wasn't a game anymore, it was a message, written in strategy and destruction. While they tried to follow the patterns, you became the glitch. The moment their eyes locked onto your plan, it was already too late. They weren't losing to a better player. They were drowning in a mindset they couldn't decode. Ooh, and that hurts the most. Because deep inside, they realized they never had control. They were just participants in a masterpiece you designed to fail them. They tried to remember their openings. You gave them nightmares they can't close. They ran simulations. But your mind is not a machine, it's a maze. Asterisk, you didn't win by rules. You won by breaking their rhythm. You made them question every move they ever believed in, and that silence after your checkmate. It wasn't shock. It was fear, because no matter how hard they trained, no matter how many titles they carried, they just met something different, something unpredictable, not genius, not prodigy, something ... dangerous. Asterisk, they thought they were in a competition, but for you, this was demolition, strategic destruction, disguised as elegance. The room wasn't a tournament, it was a trap, and you built every wall of it in silence. Damn, they thought they were playing chess, but what they were really doing was trying to survive inside your brain. Asterisk, ooh, and the worst part, they weren't just losing pieces, they were losing hope. Move after move, you stripped them of their illusions. The board wasn't shrinking, their confidence was. They came in thinking they were kings. But you showed them even kings kneel. When faced with a mind that doesn't play to win, but plays to destroy, you didn't just predict their next step. You built it for them, then burned the floor beneath. Their hands shook. Their eyes darted. They looked at the board like it betrayed them. But it wasn't the board. It was you. You became the glitch in their code, the nightmare in their formula. And the moment they realized that, it was over. Asterisk, they didn't lose to a better strategy, they lost to a deeper mind. Because while they played for trophies, you were playing for impact. Not just to defeat, but to dismantle. To humiliate every ounce of fake superiority they carried in. And oh, you did it. With silence, with calculation, with cruelty and class. You didn't raise your voice. You raised doubt in their identity. They came in with pride, left with panic, because they didn't just lose a match. They lost their reputation. Asterisk, and now, the room feels colder. Their legacy feels weaker, because someone walked in, without fame, without noise, without mercy, and turned giants into shadows. Asterisk, their strategies. Textbook, their mindset. Predictable, their downfall. Beautiful, you didn't need speed, you needed patience. Because predators don't chase, they wait. And you waited for that one fatal pattern, that tiny misstep in their so-called perfect system. And then you pounced. Not loud, not wild, lethal. A quiet kind of violence that only geniuses can deliver. Asterisk, they thought they were ahead. They thought they saw the trap. But what they didn't see was that they were the trap. Every move they made pulled them deeper. Every smart decision was part of your design. Damn, you didn't beat them with better moves. You beat them with better vision, because you weren't looking at the board. You were staring straight into their soul. Asterisk, they trained for this. You were born for it. They memorized lines. You wrote new ones in real time. They played the game. You redefined it. Now they sit there, head down, mind spinning, wondering how a ghost with no titles, no coaches, no audience, just walked in and erased everything they built. Asterisk, ooh, and the silence in that room. It wasn't out of respect, it was shock. They didn't just lose a game, they lost their place in the food chain, because when you sit at the table, every piece becomes a pawn. Every player becomes prey. And the rules bend for you. Because systems don't scare you, titles don't move you, and legends crumble in your presence. Asterisk, they sat there, frozen, not because they didn't know what to do, but because nothing they knew mattered anymore. You weren't playing a different game. You were playing on a different frequency. A frequency they couldn't hear, but could feel in every second of panic, every move that backfired, every breath they held while hoping you'd slip. But you didn't. You never do, because this wasn't luck. This wasn't instinct. This was designed chaos. With a smile, asterisk, they memorized every champion's style. But no one taught them how to handle a storm wrapped in silence. You didn't just take their king, you took their confidence, their rhythm, their aura, and you did it all with elegance and execution, with precision so ruthless it felt like art. Damn, it wasn't even a match, it was a lesson, a brutal, poetic dismantling of everything they believed about mastery. Asterisk, and now they're sitting in their hotel rooms, replaying it in their heads. Where did I go wrong? The answer, the moment they sat across from you. Because the second you touched the board, the future was already written. They just didn't know. They were reading your story, line by line, all the way down to defeat. They'll say you were unpredictable. They'll say it didn't make sense. But deep down, they know the truth: you didn't win. You decided when they lost. Asterisk. They thought their experience would protect them. They thought their trophies made them untouchable. But that's the thing. Trophies are earned in the past, but fear is created in the present. And today, you didn't just make them lose. You made them question whether they ever truly won. Asterisk, now they flinch at silence. Now they fear stillness. Because that's what you used as your weapon. Not aggression, but precision. While they moved fast, you moved right. While they focused on winning, you focused on breaking. And oh, did you break them? Not just their formation, but their identity. Because a loss like this, it doesn't go away. It etches itself into a player's soul. Now every game they play after this, they'll second-guess themselves. Every good move will feel like a gamble, because you left a seed. In their minds, doubt. Asterisk, they didn't lose a tournament. They lost the narrative. They were the untouchables, the elite, until you walked in with no name, no noise, and turned their throne into rubble. They studied the masters, but no one taught them what to do when the board itself turns against them. And that's exactly what it felt like. Not defeat, but betrayal by the very game they worshipped. Damn, you weren't a challenger. You were a reckoning. And now, they talk quietly when they speak of you. They say your name in whispers, because you didn't come to compete. You came to remind them legends can fall too. You see, while they wore suits, practiced speeches, signed autographs, you were silent in the dark, sharpening a skill that no one could see coming. Not for trophies, not for clout, but for that one perfect moment where the entire world would witness what happens when the top gets cracked open. And now they're left wondering, how do you beat someone who doesn't care about winning because he already knows he's inevitable? They sat across from you expecting a match, but what they got was a message, a brutal one, delivered in silence, sealed with a smile, and written in the shattered pride of champions. Asterisk, they'll write books about this game, not because of how it was played, but because of how it ended, without fireworks, without fanfare, just a single move that made history collapse in silence. You didn't just outplay them, you exposed them. Every polished move they rehearsed, every fake confidence they wore like armor, you tore it off, piece by piece. They weren't beaten by a better player. They were devoured by a mind that doesn't flinch, doesn't blink, doesn't break, and that's the part that haunts them the most. Asterisk, because when they looked into your eyes, there was no thrill, no celebration, just cold calculation. Like a ghost had taken form, stepped across the board, and whispered, "This was always mine." Ew, they tried to hold it together, but their fingers trembled, their lips pressed tight, and their gaze, it never came back to meet yours again, because they didn't want to see what they'd become. Just another line on your timeline, just another casualty in a war they didn't know they were in. Asterisk, you don't just play chess. You perform autopsies on the pride of the elite, and every match is a scalpel, every move a cut, until nothing's left but exposed truth. They were never ready for someone like you, and now they know. No prep can protect you. No theory can save you. When you're sitting across from someone who sees 10 moves ahead and only needs 2. Asterisk, damn. They thought they could study your style. But how do you study a storm? How do you predict something that was never born to follow patterns, but to obliterate them? You didn't challenge their greatness. You reminded them true greatness doesn't wear a crown. It carries a grin. Asterisk, and now they've stopped playing to win. They're playing to survive. But you don't play for either. You play to erase their legacy and write your own. Asterisk, it didn't end at the board. It started there. Now their nights are quiet, but not peaceful, because the game replays in their mind on loop, move by move, mistake by mistake. And no matter how many times they try to rewrite it, you still win every single time. They're not reviewing the game anymore. They're trying to undo a collapse. Asterisk, their hands still hover over invisible boards, trying to find an alternate path, one that doesn't lead to checkmate, but it doesn't exist. Because you didn't give them options, you gave them fate. You don't just outplay, you trap, you disorient, you infect their thoughts with the idea that no matter how prepared they are, they'll never be ready for someone like you. Now they whisper behind closed doors. He doesn't play by openings. He opens minds. and then breaks them. Asterisk, damn. They built their careers on flawless execution. But you reminded them, flawless doesn't mean untouchable. And when you sat across that board, they weren't facing another player. They weren't facing a living paradox, calm but destructive. Silent but undeniable. No titles, no sponsors. Just power. Asterisk. They trained in light, but you come from shadow. They were taught by coaches, but you were trained by consequences. And that's what made the difference. They feared losing points. You feared nothing. And that kind of player, you can't prepare for it. You can only survive it. Asterisk, and now, the board fears you. The pieces tremble when you touch them, because even the game knows you don't follow rules. You ruin them. You didn't join the ranks of the greats. You ended their line. Asterisk, the match ended. But the consequences, they've only just begun. Because now, the chess world is trembling. Behind every handshake, there's hesitation. Behind every smile, there's fear. Analysts are reviewing the footage frame by frame, desperately trying to decode the impossible. They pause, rewind, zoom in. Still, nothing makes sense. Because how do you explain a player who doesn't think like a human? How do you chart a mind that doesn't follow any map? They called it a fluke at first, until it kept happening. Until more grandmasters fell silently, shamefully, one by one. Asterisk, and now, the top players are backing out, suddenly unavailable, suddenly retiring, suddenly stepping back to coach. Lies. They're not retiring from the game. They're escaping you, because your name is now more than a name. It's a phenomenon, a ripple in the system, a glitch in the matrix they trusted for decades, and it's growing. Asterisk, you don't have a seat at their table. You flipped their table. They spent years climbing their sacred ladder, and you walked in, lit the whole thing on fire, and walked away without looking back. No sponsors, no invitations, no celebration, just silence. Heavy silence, because deep down they know, if you can't beat the ghost, you become one. Asterisk, they're not just losing games, they're losing followers, credibility, control, because every time your name is spoken, their legacy dims. The spotlight they fought for, now it's dimmed by your shadow, and it's only getting darker. Asterisk, you didn't take over the game. You made the game submit. There's no blueprint for stopping you, no defense, no opening. No team of analysts can map your mind, because you don't come to win. You come to remind the world that systems were built by the average and broken by the dangerous. Asterisk, now, when a new tournament is announced, your name isn't on the list, but it's still in every mind, every preparation, every conversation, because even in your absence, you dominate. The game doesn't feel the same anymore. It feels haunted. Rooms that used to echo with confidence now sit in tension. Because what you left behind wasn't just a defeat. It was a virus, a silent infection that spread across continents, one shattered ego at a time. Asterisk, you turned the board into a battlefield. And now, no one walks into a match without flinching. Even the champions second-guess themselves. They pause, look over their shoulder, wondering if you're in the room. You reprogrammed their instincts. You rearranged their hierarchy. You broke the structure they worshipped for decades. And the system, it's trying to recover, trying to reset. But it can't, because you were never part of it. You didn't rise through their rankings. You crashed down from above. Asterisk, and now, the Federation holds secret meetings, trying to solve the problem, trying to analyze your footage like it's a crime scene, calling you a statistical anomaly, a disruption, a ghost in the algorithm. But the truth is you're the future they never prepared for. And now that future is here. The present is collapsing, asterisk their top players. They don't look the same anymore. The arrogance is gone. The flair is gone. What's left? Fear, caution, quiet, respect, disguised as distance. Because what you did wasn't about one match. It was a shift in gravity. You didn't just win. You made the center fall apart. Asterisk, and here's the truth they'll never admit. They don't want a rematch. They don't want revenge. They want you to disappear so they can sleep again. But you don't disappear. You linger, not in the room, but in their hands, their clocks, their minds. You are the move they didn't see coming and still can't forget. Asterisk now. They act like you never existed. No interviews, no rematches, no mentions, because even speaking your name feels like summoning something they can't handle. But deep down, they know. The audience knows. The board knows. You didn't leave a mark. You left a crater. And inside it, all their titles, all their fame, all their records, buried. Asterisk, this wasn't an upset. It wasn't luck. It was inevitable. Because some players are made to compete. Others are built to conquer. But you were born to remind the world that greatness doesn't ask permission. It doesn't follow rules. It doesn't wear a crown. It breaks the one already sitting on the throne. Asterisk, now the lights dim. The room clears. But your move, it still echoes across boards, across leagues, across legends. Because the truth is, simply you didn't win the game. You ended an era.